Okay, so some instructions on how to be good audience. In fact, great audience. Are you ready for it? Okay, so this is what a good audience looks like. Yeah? Can we be like that? Can I have a good fake smile or a laughter? This is a good audience. This is what a bad audience looks like, yeah? So don't be like that girl, okay? Don't freak us out. That's how you clap. That's a good clap. Can we try once? Yeah? This is not such a good clap, right? So don't try that on me, right? When I'm speaking, don't fall asleep. But if you do fall asleep, when you wake up, at least pretend as if you're listening to me. Is that okay? Yeah? Next, let's see if I can. Okay, when you hear something cute, what do you say? Oh, ladies, come on, little louder. Okay, all three ladies in the room. Don't hesitate to laugh, yeah? But ensure that you're slapping your own thigh, not your neighbor's. That's not a good thing. And cheer the speakers, right? Yeah, we need your encouragement. So let me start with my story. My story begins about 16 years ago with the great Indian dream. What is a great Indian dream? Now, I know that when I say great Indian dream, it probably means different things to different people. So let me share with you what my great Indian dream was growing up. I was born and brought up in Hyderabad in late 90s. And back then, there was only one great Indian dream. Finding a way to get out of India. Right? Every family in the neighborhood had a son or a daughter who lived abroad. Right? And the worst news your mother could get was that you didn't get your US visa. Right? But if you did get your US work permit, like your ratings could skyrocket with your neighborhood aunties, right? You are like the prime. And getting an accent was better than getting a PhD, right? I had friends who would go to America for 2 weeks and come back with an accent, right? But the holy grail of all this was getting a PR, right? If you would get a PR, any girl's father would say yes to you, right? So that's the ecosystem I grew up in, and I went after the great Indian dream, and I thought I had cracked it. Because back then, I was living in UK, and I had a really good job, the job I wanted, and I was promoted. I got a good position that came with a 2-bedroom apartment. Back then, I was also madly, truly, deeply in love with this gorgeous lady. This is when you say, come on, wake up, guys. So I had the naukri and the chokri, so I was sorted, right? I was like, life is set. But life obviously had other plans for me. My great Indian dream came crashing down when me and my fiance came back to India to get married and then got stuck here because my work permit didn't come through. So we had to figure out what we were going to do in India, right? And obviously, I asked myself the million-dollar question. Am I going to go join a corporate? Or am I going to go the startup way? The devil and the deep blue sea, right? And after a lot of soul searching, I took a very brave decision. Okay, maybe not very brave, very stupid decision. I decided to move to Bangalore and become an entrepreneur, right? In other words, jobless, right? So I had no clue, but I had this great business plan. I exactly knew how I was going to change the world, make $1 million and do a TED Talk, right? In other words, again, I was clueless what I was doing. But it's all about the journey, isn't it, for entrepreneurs? It was all about the journey. And it was extremely rewarding, the journey. It had many rewards. Of course, apart from the money, in money area, I was cashless, right? I think I was really inspired by what Steve Jobs said, stay hungry, stay foolish. But I think I took the hungry and foolish part literally. That was the problem, okay? The reality looked very different from what I assumed it would be. There were more downs than ups. But this reality taught me more than any MBA degree would have or could have. I learned a lot going through this journey. I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about running a business. I learned a lot about running large teams. I learned how to win, but I also learned that it's okay to lose sometimes. I learned a lot of harsh realities about working in India. And there's one more thing I learned about India. The story of India is not a story of slumdog millionaires. It's a story of slumdogs and millionaires. It's a story of haves and the have-nots. I say this because I ran a recruitment firm for 10 years and I met thousands and thousands of job applicants. And there were primarily two types. Type 1 came from very affluent families. They went to good public schools. They could speak flawless English. Yeah, they were very tech savvy. They could pay $799 and attend a TED talk. And they already had 4 job offers, but they wanted to know if I had a better offer for them. Yeah? Type 2 were equally talented kids, but they had come from low-income backgrounds. They were not very tech-savvy. They couldn't speak English. They went to government schools, and they were desperate for a job. And unfortunately, the only thing I had to say to them was, "You're rejected." The obvious bridge between these two worlds was good education. I also learned through this journey how the education crisis in India was changing. You know, about 15 years back, the problem was access to education. But today, they say 96% of our kids get enrolled in primary school. So it's no more access to education, it's access to good education. Because they're going to schools, but how much are they learning? Kids who go to government schools, right? They come out of those schools knowing almost 0% English. Whereas all well-paying private jobs require you to speak English. So we are denying them the most basic skill they need to build their futures. Not only that, the quality of education they receive in these schools. You know, one of the recent surveys throws up the stats, you know. It says about 53% of class 3 students cannot read class 2 textbooks. 73%. Can you imagine these kids sitting in the class and struggling to cope with what's being taught? When you and I struggled to cope in the class, we could go home and there was somebody at home, your parents, your elder brother or sister, to help you. But these kids, right, they're first generation learners. So they're not learning anything at school, and when they go home, there is nobody to help them. And when our parents were not able to help us, what did they do? They sent you to that neighborhood tuition auntie, right? We all have that one neighborhood tuition auntie that we hate with all our hearts because she ruined all our good evenings, isn't it? But when it comes to these kids, right, even if parents are willing to shell out money, they say that about 86% of these kids do not have access to a paid tutor. So they can't learn, they're not learning at school, there's nobody to help at home, and they don't have an access to a paid tutor. The other thing with these kids is, because they live in communities where most of them either have not gone to school or have dropped out, they lack role models as far as education is concerned. There's nobody to guide them, to mentor them through this difficult journey. Education is tough, we all know that, right? Now imagine this. All those hurdles, and they somehow gather the will to cross those hurdles and get out of college, then they have to compete with you and I to get a job. How is that fair? So it's no wonder, though the statistics say that 96% of the kids get enrolled in primary school, they say about 70 to 90% of them will drop out before they reach college. Which is in worst case scenario, 9 out of every 10 kids who go to government schools will drop out before they reach college. Can you comprehend that? Can you comprehend 90% of your classmates, college mates, dropping out by the time you finish college? It's a serious crisis. So faced with this reality, we asked ourselves, what if you and I could do something about it? Yeah? For us, the solution was right in front of us. We had this fancy office which was empty after 6 p.m. So we opened it to 15 kids from a nearby slum community, and we started teaching them English and computers. Yeah? Just a bunch of friends. We started teaching 15 kids, that became 30, 30 became 50, 80, 100, and we were like, oops, looks like we are in trouble here. We really have to start a serious, real charity. So we went and registered. Now, a real charity requires a real name, right? And we thought of all sorts of fancy names. But in the end, we said, you know what, we should just call ourselves You and I. Because our story is really about you and I. You and I believing that we can be the change. You and I believing that we need to get our hands dirty. Yeah? And what started in Bangalore in a small office with 15 kids has become a movement now. We've gone from one small office in Bangalore to 20 cities. With 54 learning centers, today we teach. We've gone from 15 kids to 2,000 kids. And just from a handful of friends to 2,000 active volunteers who turn up every week to teach these kids, including Mysore. But this is not a story of just the growth. It's a story of transformation. It's a story of impact. And we have seen transformation not just in the kids, but in the volunteers as well. This is one of the kids we teach. Her name is Beena. We've been teaching Beena for about 6 years. She was abandoned by her parents because she was a girl child. And Beena was, she's always made us proud. She's hardworking, she's smart. Last year she was in 9th grade, and there was one subject she was really struggling with, accounts. And to make it worse, her teacher was absent for 2 months, so she really needed help. And our UNI volunteers reached out to her, and they really helped her. They would tutor her every day. And thanks to that extra tutoring and her hard work, she scored 96% in accounts in her 9th grade, highest in her class. Yeah. But what really blew our minds was, whatever she learned from the volunteers, she went and taught her classmates and helped them also pass their exam. Yeah? And this year, Beena wrote her 10th grade. The boards, we're all scared of boards, right? And guess how much she scored? 83% in her 10th board exams. Yeah, this is where you clap, yeah? So don't hesitate to clap. Her great Indian dream is to become a journalist, and I hope she gets there. And it's when I meet kids like Beena, I look back at all the sorrow I went through that my work permit didn't come. I'm glad that it didn't come. And I'm glad that I was able to trade my great Indian dream for what I do today. Yeah? I still run a business, and I also run a charity. Yeah? It's not perfect. In fact, sometimes it's as comfortable as wearing underwear outside, right? There are ups and downs. I'm still learning. I'm still growing. But I have to tell you, it is freaking awesome what I do. Well, let me ask you, what is your great Indian dream? What do you want to do 10 years from now? Who do you want to be with? What kind of work you want to be doing? And most importantly, what kind of person do you want to become? If there's something you can take away from my story, here are a couple of things. Make sure your great Indian dream is your dream. Don't just do something because everyone else is doing. Yeah, because after all, it's your life. Yeah? Don't just be yet another ordinary, be extraordinary. Dare to be different. Dare to dance to your own drumbeat. To follow your own path. Because you burn the brightest when you're true to yourself. Yeah? Know your why. Why do you want to do this? What's your reason? Have a strong reason. Because no matter what you decide to do, the chances are that the journey is going to be difficult because anything worthwhile doing is uphill. You get that? It's going to be tough. And if you don't have a good enough reason, the chances are that you will give up, you will quit, or you will compromise. My good enough reason is a 9-year-old girl from West Bengal. The days when I'm dejected, I want to give up, and I have those days twice a week. Yeah? I look at my good enough reason. The day that I almost quit. Business was tough, so was running you and I almost gave up. That morning, I didn't want to get out of bed, but I had a meeting with the social worker, so I got out of the bed, went to meet her, and I was sitting there, and we were waiting for the meeting to start, and she starts telling me about this 9-year-old girl from West Bengal, and this is her story. 9-year-old girl, she doesn't have a mother, dad is paralyzed, has 2 younger siblings. A neighbor's friend comes to their house and talks to her dad and says, "Why didn't you send your daughter with me to Bangalore? I will get her a job as a maid and she'll be able to support your family." Dad, out of desperation, says yes. And so this guy takes this 9-year-old girl and brings her to Bangalore. They come in a train, 30-hour journey. And for 30 hours, this girl is sitting in his lap and his hands are all over her. He brings her to his house, makes her live with his wife and children, and he wakes her up every night and he rapes her. Out of desperation, she confides in the wife and she gets beaten up black and blue. Fortunately, the social worker gets to know about this girl and she rescues her. And then the social worker told me that, hey, we rescued this girl and now she's living in this shelter home. And she told me the name of that shelter home. When I heard the name, it was as if I was hit by a bolt of lightning. Because I realized we work with that shelter home. And that girl is one of the 2,000 kids we work with. And as long as girls like that are out there, I have a good enough reason to do what I do. What is your good enough reason? Dream big. I hope your dreams are bigger than you. Because if your dreams start with I and end with myself, I recommend you rethink your dreams. Because you got to believe that you are made for more. You got to believe that you're here to change the world. The smartphone in your hand gives you access to more tech and information than the US president about 15 years back. That makes you extremely powerful. Now, what you do with that power is totally up to you. Nelson Mandela said this. He said, poverty, like slavery, is man-made, it's not God-made. So it can be eradicated by the mankind. But sometimes it falls on the generation to be great. And you can be that generation. What are you going to do with that power? One last thing, act. Very simple. For the heaven's sake, act on your dreams. Because the fact is, people often have the ability to dream the impossible. Yeah? But they lack the audacity to act on it. My sincere hope today is that you may have the audacity to act on your dreams. That you may have the gift of faith and foolishness to believe that you can change the world. That you may be not yet another ordinary, but extraordinary. Have the courage to believe that you can be that great generation. Thank you.